bringing you the biggest guests in sports talk daily.
Every single day. Let's just say you're Bill Belichick. Doesn't New England play the Jets in the last game of the season? Would he actually tank a game without officially tanking a game to make sure that the Jets don't get Trevor Lawrence? Put Julian Edelman in there, quarterback, right, Paulie? He's diabolical. Are the Browns good or very good?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm going to say good. I think the Chiefs and Steelers are very good. I think the Browns and Bills are good. I can't go very good with the Browns or the Bills. I will say this, though. I love what the Browns did yesterday. My favorite thing is when teams shatter the lazy narrative about them. Like last week, Dan, I tweeted that Kevin Stefanski should be in the running for Coach of the Year because he has the Cleveland Browns at 8-3. And you know who replied to me? Some guy named McLovin, Andrew Perloff, and said, yeah, but who have they played? Who have they played? You know who they played, McLovin? They've now played 12 NFL teams. They've won 9 of the games, including beating the brains off the Titans. They beat the Colts. This whole schedule thing with the Browns, they're the Browns. We're talking about the Cleveland Browns, and they're 9-3, and you've got back row bumbling whatevers like McLovin saying, well, who have they played, though? Who have they even played? I'm still mad at him about that.
Yeah, but why do you let it bother you? It's McLovin. Like, you're better than that.
I know. You're right. I like getting fired up. I miss you guys. I haven't been up there in a while. And so when McLovin, and then everybody's like, yeah, who have they played? Oh, it helps when you play the NFC East. This whole, this isn't college football. You play who's on your NFL schedule, and they beat 9 NFL teams.
All right, let me let McLovin. This is Ivy League on Ivy League crime. Yeah, McLovin.
I mean, Ross, honestly, I follow you for the press box food recommendations. I just saw an actual football tweet, so I felt like the need to respond instead of the fact that they had chicken marsala at the Colorado State press room. So I was so taken aback by this.
McLovin, you mock what you don't understand, okay? Those press box food videos get terrific engagement. People love it. And maybe if you're ever actually in a press box, you would be able to enjoy how delicious it is. Wow. And by the way, I'm also mad. You get Meat Friday, McLovin. You can just be quiet with the Meat Friday. Traeger grills, so good. I saw what Alan put out for you guys Friday. I wanted to kill somebody. I wanted to eat that so bad.
I did want to bring this up before we go. Bill Belichick, what he did on the road against the Chargers, 45-0. And Cam throws for less than 100 yards. I don't know what Belichick is doing. You watch the All-22, so you see whatever. There's no greater game plan adjusting coach in the history of sports, in my opinion, than Belichick. From series to series, quarter to quarter, game to game, he somehow does something with an offense that's, is makeshift.
Yeah.
But was that impressive, what they did against the Chargers?
Definitely. Very impressive. Now, the Chargers, with their special teams issues, always find ways to make teams look better, right? But New England is playing almost perfect football in all 3 phases of the game for about 5-6 weeks straight now. And that's because of the head coach. That's where, Dan, you and I had the conversation. COVID-19, forget the damn talent on the team or anything. The fact that Belichick couldn't be there coaching them and on them with all the details and all that, that was the biggest issue they had during COVID-19. But the big thing about them, Cam manages the game the right way. The offensive line is one of the best in football as far as running is concerned, and they run the proper plays into the right look every time. And then, their defense and everything there. That Chargers team, it's a top 10 defense, a top 10 offense. To get blown out like that's pretty embarrassing, and I would think Anthony Lynn's a little in trouble there.
How much did it bother you with Trevor Lawrence not playing? You guys beat Clemson, and then you hear, but Trevor Lawrence didn't play.
Right. I kind of ignored it because I kept saying, Trevor Lawrence doesn't play defense. So it was the same for us, and my job is to win, right? That's what we said. My job is to win as the quarterback. And whoever the 11 guys they were going to put out there on defense is what we were going to go against. And I think it'll be good that he's back. And hopefully we can get those people to be quiet, because that's what I've heard a lot, just like you have.
Who gets your Heisman vote, if you had one?
I don't know. I think Kyle Trask is really good. Been watching him. Watched his game last week, and I think he's doing really well, and he's fun to watch, and he's really elevated his game right now.
Okay, I don't understand why you don't get any credit here, and I say that having you on, but I've said that before you came on. You put up really good numbers and you win, but you're not put in the conversation of great I'm talking college quarterbacks. We tend to lump quarterbacks in what they're going to be like when they get to the NFL. I'm just talking about what you do in college, and that's what I'm surprised at. I think you should be certainly in the conversation for a Heisman finalist. I don't know if you're going to get there, but you win, and you're the second, ranked second in the country. So help me understand what you hear as to why you're not lumped in with any of these other quarterbacks right now.
I'm not 100% sure. There's probably a lot of reasons out there, but one of them could be just because we're at Notre Dame. You either love us or you hate us. It's one or the other. So, a lot of people, talked about, a conference, they can't win if they were to join a conference, or just a lot of things like that. And we were able to join a conference this year and, go undefeated in it. So,
wait, did you hate Notre Dame growing up?
No, I didn't.
Oh, come on.
I grew up, really watching the Pac-12 on the West Coast, and really fortunate to get out here. I'm really glad I did. It's been an unbelievable experience, but I didn't hate Notre Dame like a lot of people do.
Is there a maturation process going on with Baker Mayfield that we should be aware of?
It's such a roller coaster ride, and we live in a roller coaster ride of an industry, right? Every Monday morning we have to react to the thing we saw the previous day. And this year on Monday mornings, I have reacted so negatively to stuff I've seen from Baker Mayfield. He doesn't throw passes with touch. He doesn't want to go through his reads. He's not progressing. He hates throwing from a clean pocket. And then all of a sudden in recent weeks, he's improved in that area. So I do think there is an element to that. The system has been great. It's really tough to separate quarterback from system. I think the best way to do it is to hold up PFF grade against your general production numbers, whether it's passer rating or yards per attempt or any other number that you want. And so far this season, Baker Mayfield's stats have been better than his performance. But what we saw on Sunday, what we've seen at times in recent weeks, is the things they needed to improve upon. Just throwing a touch pass to Rashard Higgins for that 17-yard touchdown, fantastic. He wasn't doing that earlier in the year. He was playing like Brett Favre, just trying to throw 100-mile-an-hour laser beams all over the field. So just that, going through his progressions a little bit more, not vacating clean pockets. Some of those things have improved in recent weeks. And when you combine that with how the Browns have helped them systematically, it bodes really well for the Browns moving forward.
Yeah, I just don't know what I'm getting. I think they have the blueprint to beat anybody in the AFC, including Kansas City, on the road because they run the football. They got a front four that can put pressure on the quarterback. I don't have to blitz. I got some skill position guys. It just comes down to Baker Mayfield, it feels like. But how did you learn to speak Chinese?
So I took that class in high school, and we just started my freshman year. I guess me and some of my buddies, we just kind of spoke it with our teacher, and she taught us everything we knew. And I kind of lost a lot of it, but I'm getting it back. I guess I have to study up on it. Maybe
you don't want to lose that. You want to be able to speak a couple of languages. How do you say "roll tide" in Mandarin Chinese?
Usually they just they'll use slang words, but I can say I play football at Alabama.
Okay.
Or Ganlan Chio Zai, Alabama. So that would be I play football at Alabama.
Yeah, you need roll tide. You need roll tide in Chinese.
I'll text my teacher and ask her.
There was a report over the weekend that maybe Harbaugh was looking towards the NFL. And then I saw a report that maybe Michigan's looking at extending Jim Harbaugh's contract here. Where do we stand with the future of Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah, the contract extension is no surprise. Jim Harbaugh, even before the season, told us that there were discussions between him and Michigan's athletic director, Warren Manuel, about an extension. They were tabled, that he said, because of the coronavirus concerns in the athletic department's finances. So that's not a huge surprise, but it's a different situation now. Now that Michigan's off to a 2-4 start, there's a lot of questions 2-6 start. A lot of questions swirling about his status and whatnot. But it's an interesting predicament here, because I think at the end of the day, and I've said this before, Michigan, I don't think is interested in firing Jim Harbaugh. There's too much respect there. He provided stability to this Michigan football program, and I think they like that. But in regards to success, I think most folks would agree that Michigan hasn't gotten them over the hump. They haven't reached the pinnacle of the Big Ten. They haven't gotten the playoff, and I think that irks some folks. So it does sound like Michigan has extended a contract extension to Harbaugh. I would not be surprised if it's 4 fewer years and less money than he was making before. But I don't think Michigan's ready to walk away from Jim just yet.
Well, Michigan might not be willing, but what about that fan base? What about the boosters, the alumni?
It's starting to grow. There has been some more criticism, especially the last few weeks, given Michigan's start to this season. And I wouldn't say that was the case as much before the season started. You still had a large faction of folks that were happy with Jim Harbaugh and the job he had done. Because you got to remember, Michigan's program has by and large been relatively clean. They've been, the negative headlines have not been there. The stability has been there. They've won enough games. Remember, Jim Harbaugh, while he hasn't gotten Michigan to the Big Ten championship, he's won about 70% of his games he's coached. So they win more than they lose. There was a growing faction that liked him and still wanted him there. And I still believe that Michigan, by and large, is happy with the job he's done. But the fan base and the boosters are starting to grow, frustrated, I think, at the lack of results.
You had a really detailed column about Texas football, and there was the report or rumor that Urban Meyer might be kicking the tires there, and that his wife was looking for homes in Austin here.
Like nobody uses Zillow. You have to fly in and do it in person.
I've watched most of Texas games this year, and they could have gone the other way, and we'd be looking at, Herman and saying he might be coach of the year in the Big 12, and they would be playing for the Big 12 championship. If I'm a Texas fan, am I staying with Coach Herman here, or are we looking elsewhere?
Well, the fans are ready to move on. They are ready to go. But my thing is, if you can't get an Urban Meyer, and let's think about it, how many real slam dunk hires have worked out in college football in the last 20 years? Urban Meyer did it twice at Florida and at Ohio State. I would argue that Nick Saban was a successful slam dunk hire at Alabama, and Brian Kelly was at Notre Dame. And we'll see about Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. He has a couple more years like this. We'll add him to that list. But it's a very short list. So you can't get anybody like that. If you compare the other names that we'd be talking about, whether it's Mario Cristobal or Matt Campbell, James Franklin, are they going to do any better than Herman does? I don't really know. He was pretty close this year, but it's still not what you want, because, they lose to TCU. He's lost to TCU 3 times. That shouldn't happen at Texas. They lose to Iowa State with a trip to the Big 12 title game on the line. That shouldn't happen at Texas. You should have better players. And in most of those games, you should have a significant talent advantage. And then, every once in a while, somebody's going to get you. But really, it should be you and Oklahoma duking it out at the top. And that's Tom Herman's problem. It's not that he hasn't been competitive against Oklahoma, because he's been very competitive against Oklahoma. It's winning against those other teams. And the question is,
but if you're saying
$30 million,
but you want to move, or they may want to move on. Who are you getting? The same can be said about Michigan. Their fan base probably wants to move on. Who are you getting to replace? But
the thing is, you can get somebody doing better than what Jim Harbaugh is doing now. You can get something better than what Jim Harbaugh has given you the last couple of years. I don't know that Texas is going to, given the current pool, get better than what they've gotten from Tom Herman, because he actually might be on a decent trajectory. Jim Harbaugh doesn't feel like he's on a good trajectory right now.
Who's winning the Heisman?
That SEC championship game is going to be a very highly watched affair among Heisman voters, because you got Mac Jones and Kyle Trask, and obviously both of them have insane talent around them. And I think that's, people say, well, Trevor Lawrence is the best player. Well, yes, if 32 NFL GMs voted for the Heisman, Trevor Lawrence would win in a landslide. But that's not how these things usually work. And so you have to say, well, is Mac Jones doing this because he's great, or because of Devontae Smith? Is Kyle Trask doing this because he's great, or because of Kyle Pitts? I think that game will probably decide it, which quarterback plays better. If one quarterback just has a disaster of a game, it's probably going to the other guy. Or if they just have a duel for the ages, I think the one who comes out on top probably winds up winning it.
How did you end up on Football Night in America?
I got a call about a week after the election from my boss here saying the folks at NBC Sports, wanted to, talk to me, had a couple ideas. I was very excited to hear that. And, so we'd been talking for about 2 weeks before it and, came up with the idea, I think, that, hey, it's December in the NFL. It's when the playoff race really gets serious. And I think it seemed like there really was a parallel there between road to 270 and an electoral map for a presidential election and road to the playoffs. It's all about scenarios. It's all about if this state goes this way or if this team does this. There really did seem to be an overlap there.
But the pressure on election night is different. Like you can be on Football Night in America and you might make a mistake and it's Football Night in America, but election night, how much pressure did you feel?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot there. And this year was more intense because there's just this added variable this year of people were voting by mail, and we knew the people voting by mail were going to be overwhelmingly Biden, and the people who were going out, and voting in person at their precinct on election day, we knew that was going to be pretty heavily Trump. And there was just this variable as the numbers would come in from a lot of places of, okay, are we looking at votes that were cast by mail here? Are we looking at votes that were cast in person today? Are we looking at a mix of both? Because that question in trying to be on top of that information was key to understanding everything that was happening. And that was just something at a certain level, there's no preparing for it because we'd never had that before in an election. And so, yeah, I felt, I always feel a lot of anxiety before these things. This year I felt about 10 times more than I have in the past.
What happens if the touch screen goes down? What was the game plan?
It's happened before. It's how I made the Tonight Show for the first time in my life. This was in the 2016 election. I was doing a segment and the board went blank, completely blank, but the writing function on it, with my finger still worked. And the camera's still rolling. Nobody's telling me to stop. So I'm like, I got to improvise here. And we were talking about sort of, road to 270. So I said, okay, I'll draw a crude outline of the United States and I can kind of talk about the different regions. So I tried to draw the United States and it looked like it turned out it looked like part of the male reproductive anatomy. Jimmy Fallon noticed it. That was my first, you say overnight fame or something. That was my first taste of it.
Okay, but how do you react to something like that? I know you. I think you majored in TV and film at Boston University, but now I'm famous and I'm infamous, and so how do you process that?
Yeah, it was the thing about that was like I didn't even realize it till things started popping up online. I really didn't think I had done anything, and then it was one of those. It was obvious once I saw it. I was like, okay, I see how everybody saw that, and of course I was on with one of my colleagues here, Hallie Jackson, and I think she was standing next to me the whole time, and you could see when you look at the tape, she recognized it the whole time. And when something like that happens, my view is it's like just own it, and I kind of stepped in it, and I'm not gonna make excuses for it. I'll just I'll laugh along with everybody because it's kind of ridiculous.
Well, it's best to grab it and own it before somebody else does. I always tell people, and this has happened to me on numerous occasions. You make a mistake, own it. And then you take away the weapon that somebody else has when they're going to point that out. So you did the right thing where you just go, hey, I did it. I move on. Yeah. Give me your favorite county in the United States.
That's a good question. My favorite county, well, I got to be partial to Middlesex County, Massachusetts, where I was born.
Is there a favorite name of a county that you loved saying?
There's Outagamie County in Wisconsin, which has one of the funny. Wisconsin has the best county names. There's also where Ann Arbor is in Michigan, Washtenaw County. When you get to the upper Midwest, I think you get a lot of those sort of Native American names, and you get those are the ones where sometimes in my early days of doing this, I would call when I wasn't sure on the pronunciation on the day of an election, I would just call up like the county clerk's office just to see how they answered the phone, and that would be my answer.
Yeah, that's what's difficult is just making sure, because I always point out that there was a movie, The Thomas Crown Affair, with Pierce Brosnan, and they mention in the movie that somebody is from Lima, Ohio. Well, it's Lima, Ohio, and if you're from that area, you're like, how could you screw that up? So you have to make sure you get it right. We might not know the county you're talking about, but the people who live in that county know the county you're talking about.
The locals do, and some of them are very, counterintuitive. You go down like where San Antonio is in Texas, it looks like Bexar County. It's Bexar County, Bexar, and it's Bexar County. That one took me a while to learn.
Like, our job is not to have preferential treatment. Like, you're supposed to see it and then say it, not factor in, well, I do like this guy. And you've been brutally honest about Jim Harbaugh not being a great coach or being overrated, or I don't want to, I'm paraphrasing here, but
I've said it all.
How awkward would it be, though? Like, if I said, hey, Jim Harbaugh would love to meet you, and he's going to be in the area. He's going to be at the mothership, and he wants to meet with you at ESPN.
I would do it in a second. And by the way, I'm in my 60s now, Dan. I've had a career of having awkward meetings with people that did not like me. It wouldn't be the first time. So there's an art of the deal, so to speak, not to recreate a bestseller from the 80s and 90s, but I'm always willing to meet anyone. And you guys like us, we don't dislike people personally. It's just we say what we believe. It's not personal.
What's the most awkward encounter you've had in this job?
Interestingly, it was Lane Kiffin. I don't know how much time we have, but I'll tell you this quick story. I was on College Game Day in 2013 before they played, I think it was Arizona, and I said, if USC can't win tonight, Lane Kiffin should be fired. Well, guess what? They didn't win, and he was fired. And the next morning on SportsCenter pretty much blamed me for the firing. And I said he was the Miley Cyrus of college football. And I mean, I got so 2 weeks later, I'm out in the University of Washington doing game day, and I find out a couple hours the night before that Lane Kiffin was going to give his first interview. So I walk in the meeting, and there's Lane Kiffin, and I was a little bit cautious, so I just decided, screw it. I'm going to walk over to him. I didn't know whether he was going to throw a punch. Not that I was overly concerned about getting punched out by Lane Kiffin, but I said hello. We ended up becoming fast friends. We started corresponding. He sent me a Miley Cyrus song the next day, and
wait, a Miley Cyrus song?
Yeah, I called him the Miley Cyrus of college football coaches. So, he showed me his personality. So, I mean, after that, I'm really not afraid of anyone. But I've talked to people that I've called for their firings before. So it can be awkward, even years later. It does, to quote the oldest cliche in the business, come with the territory.
Of all the fan bases, though, what's the one that's maybe most sensitive or makes you a little nervous?
Well, I spent most of my life in Alabama, so I would never come after the Crimson Tide fans.
Or Auburn.
I have had more problems with Michigan fans because they just seem like they're everywhere. And until recently, I mean, I was about 2 years ago. I was walking down in Georgetown, and the Michigan fans came up to me and wanted to accost me. They are in another world because. Dan, Michigan, even though they've won, I think, 1.5 national championships in 50 years, they still think they're elite. So when you criticize Harbaugh, and until recently, when you criticize Harbaugh, they took it so personally. They still take it personally, but they don't bother me as much. But they're probably the most difficult fan base I have had to deal with.
These comments aren't going to help that situation, Paul.
The good news is I'm not traveling to Michigan
anytime soon. Yeah, no reason to go there. I thought Mike Tomlin had an interesting conversation with Chase Young after the game. I think he basically says, my teams aren't bad enough to get a guy as good as you in the draft. I'm paraphrasing here, but it feels like that's what he was saying with Chase Young. That's a pretty good compliment there.
It is. It's a very good compliment, and Chase is one of those guys because not only is he going to, in my opinion, be a very good football player in this league and have a chance to have a Hall of Fame career. He plays at an energy level, an excitement that I think really again gets his teammates fired up, and that's one of the things I think is really neat about him is he doesn't know any different. That's just the way he is. So it's his whole approach to the game. He loves the game. You should have seen him at pregame warmup. Because we were talking about some of the guys on the other team, and he said, "Oh my God, I got to go over and say hi to Ben. I got to shake Ben's hand." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Oh man, are you kidding? I grew up watching him play. It was, he was so fired up." And then when Ben got close, he ran over there and introduced himself, shook Ben's hand, and then he said, "Man, I had to do that, Coach." I said, "All right."
No, that's when you say introduce yourself after you've sacked him, okay?
But you know what? I left that to one of the other coaches to say.
When did you know you were going to win that game?
Wow. I would say probably middle of the fourth quarter. We took the lead, felt really comfortable about it, got an opportunity to extend the lead. But I'd say middle of the fourth quarter. Just the energy, the vibe, everything was going in the right direction.
What was it like in the locker room after the win?
It was cool. It was, it's one of those things that you remember. It's one of those things that you truly appreciate, and you don't get it unless you've been in the locker room. And I'm telling you, it was pandemonium. The guys were excellent. I mean, I'm so happy for those guys because, a lot of them have gone through a lot for the last few years. A lot of them went through a lot, this off season, having to take all the body blows that this team took, from everything from the social issues to the naming to those articles that came out. There was just a lot, and this really, I think, was, if you could feel the energy that they were releasing, you would almost think, God, they're just letting a lot of steam off right now.
Can you outbench any of your starters on defense?
Not anymore.
Okay,
not anymore.
I'm just curious about it.
No.
At your peak, though.
Oh, I'd have had a chance. I would have had a chance.
What about on offense? You can outbench Alex Smith, right?
I'll tell you what. Now he's a warrior inside the weight room. Are you kidding? Oh my God!
Wait, what's a warrior in the weight room mean?
A guy that just slings it. He's around just fighting the weight. I mean, he's impressive. I mean, I tell you, we've got some guys that really are war daddies when they get into the weight room. It's an impressive thing to watch.
Let me give you a poll question here. You could have an 8-team playoff, or we could just have the Power 5 conferences secede from the union, and they would have their own league, their own, guidelines, their own commissioner. Which one would you rather have? Which one is more feasible?
Oh, that's a great question. I think 8-team playoff is more feasible. It would still end up with 7 at least Power 5 teams in it. If they could make it 8 for 8, they would. But I don't like the idea of the Power 5 splitting off, because I think that really jeopardizes the basketball tournament. It becomes 2 separate entities really from the NCAA, and maybe that's what should happen. But I just think then you could also easily split off the basketball tournament and further ruin college sports, because then Butler doesn't get to go to a Final Four against UConn and against Duke and that sort of thing. So I think I would prefer to see an 8-team playoff with the, perhaps again, still naive hope that they would do the right thing and at least be somewhat inclusive of somebody outside the Power 5.
All right, who's gotten jobbed here in the college football rankings?
Well, Cincinnati absolutely has gotten jobbed. Coastal Carolina has gotten jobbed. Louisiana has gotten wildly jobbed. BYU has gotten jobbed. You could make a case that Indiana has gotten jobbed as well, but let's concentrate on the teams outside the Power 5 that have had great seasons. For Iowa State to be number 7 with 2 losses in a league that completely flopped in their 1 week where they tried to play non-conference games. The Big 12 went 0-3 against the Sun Belt, but the 2-loss leader of the Big 12 is 6 spots ahead of the undefeated leader of the Sun Belt, and 12 spots ahead of the Sun Belt team that beat its butt in Ames to open the season. It's just preposterous to me. It's like, and I said in the column, the default setting in college sports is, well, the Big 12 is good. Well, the proof on the field was that the Big 12 was not good when they played somebody other than the Big 12, but they still get rewarded because we're used to saying the Big 12 is good. So that's what it frosts me to no end, that this is the way things always work. I mean, Cincinnati is undefeated, has been statistically dominant, has been dominant in every game except for UCF, which is a pretty good team, and they pulled that game out. They drop back a spot because they didn't play. I mean, it's preposterous. I would love to be in the committee room so I could be throwing things at them saying, what are you doing?
But explain that to me. All those years that you coached against Belichick, you know he's going to try to take away. What did he try to take away from your Colts teams when you faced him?
Well, for us, for a long time, it was the deep passing game. And I joke with Rodney Harrison. We played a game against them in 2004. We ran the same play, inside belly to the right, 12 straight times. Took it all the way down the field and scored. He didn't change defenses. He said, is Peyton Manning going to be patient enough? We had to learn that and be patient and run the ball. Then in the championship game, when we were down, we had to drive to win the game. He played the same coverage. He was not going to let Marvin Harrison beat him. We threw every ball in that drive to the left side. Reggie Wayne, Dallas Clark on the left, Brian Fletcher on the left, because he was not going to let Marvin Harrison on the right beat him. And we had to learn that. We had to go in, and Peyton would tell our guys, our Brian Fletchers and Reggie Waynes, you're going to have a big day today because that's the way the game is going to go.
It's interesting, though. Every team knows that Bill's going to do this. And I think he's done a really good job coaching this year because I don't think they're good at all. And Cam is probably more dangerous as a runner than a passer. But if you're Belichick, have you seen enough of Cam that you know what your decision's going to be at the end of the year on is he going to be your quarterback?
I think it really depends on how this plays out. If they continue to win and make the playoffs and make some noise in the playoffs, then he says, yeah, I can build around Cam Newton, get me some other weapons that kind of go with this, build an offense like Baltimore, get those defenders back who opted out for COVID. And, yeah, we could do some damage next year because we're not that far away.
I want you to be honest, and I know you always are, sometimes to your detriment.
You kill me with that. You're getting ready to load me up on the question.
When you were coaching, were you a faster runner than Peyton Manning?
Not my last couple of years. I think maybe when I was 48 or 49 when I got there. But by the time I was 52, at the end of the day, no, he could beat me.
Are you sure?
I think so. When we ran off the field after the Super Bowl, he beat me to the locker room. So.
You've done everything, but if you're looking for that, you get into a rhythm. The sport that's the hardest to get into a rhythm and the easiest to get into a rhythm.
I think baseball is the most satisfying, especially on radio, because of its rhythm. If you look at football, especially on television, football, you've got 4 seconds of action, and then if they run the clock out, like 35 seconds of inaction, and normally that's where the analyst comes in and does the replay. There are a lot of things, as you know, in a football telecast, a lot of traffic that you have to handle. So it's difficult in that sense to really get into the stories. Basketball and hockey are continuous, so that's very difficult as well. Baseball is different. It's a stop and a start, and it gives you a lot of leeway and a lot of freedom to talk about a lot of different things. And, these days the games are going over 3 hours, so you have plenty of time. It's played every day. So I would say, for me, baseball was always the easiest because of that. Hockey's the hardest. No question about it. The great Mike Emmerich retiring this year, and nobody did it better. He was fantastic. To be able to do what he did, and Mike started on radio as well. And I think a lot of the great announcers, the guys who have reached the pinnacle, got their start in radio. You learn to paint pictures. And I see a lot of the young kids are coming up right now, they're going right to television. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I do know that those of us who, Marv Albert and Mike Emmerich and the guys who, have come up through the years, we all got our start in radio, and I think that was tremendously beneficial.
Learning on radio, because radio really, I fell in love with doing this by listening to radio, whether it was you, Marty Brenneman and Joe Nuxall, listening to talk shows, Pete Franklin out of Cleveland. I was fortunate, but I'm listening, and the power of just listening to words and then creating your own picture, whatever that might be, is really powerful. And I was never able to master a play-by-play, but it did help me in communicating in what I do on this show. And that is, don't take it for granted they know what you're talking about or what it looks like. You got to make sure you explain it to them, and always think of the radio listener more than the TV viewer.
No question. And especially in my era in Cincinnati, there weren't that many games on television. So the vast majority of games were radio only on WLW. And I would always picture, maybe a guy sitting on a porch in Corbin, Kentucky, having a beverage and sitting out there, in the twilight in the summertime. And I was kind of doing the game for him. It's so much different now, of course, on television and with social media and with streaming and all of the rest. It's so much different. But if you go back to that point in time, you're exactly right. It's radio. I mean, to this day, I think about, we go back to Vin Scully for a second. And Vinny did the games until, 4 or 5 years ago. So Vinny was in his late 80s when he stepped away, and he was still phenomenal. And I can't tell you, listening to him from the time I was 6 till the time, Vinny's 88 years old in his last season. And I'd be driving, back home from someplace, and Vinny would start to tell a story, and I'd have to stop the car in the driveway, keep it idling, and just hear the rest of the story. I mean, that's how compelling Vinny was. He was just the master of that to the day he retired. And it's so true. This is where you really, cut your eye teeth, earn your chops, or whatever you want to say about it. But radio is the way to go. It's so much different right now, as we know.
I also, as strange as this may sound, the greatest call you ever had with a baseball game had to do with the '89 earthquake, when there was no action on the field, but there was so much action around you. Your composure, like you handled that like you were Peter Jennings. I mean, you handled it like a newsman, and you knew the area, but that might have been your greatest call at a baseball stadium, Al.
It was certainly the oddest. You don't rehearse for an earthquake in the middle of the World Series. Let's put it that way. So for starters, Tim McCarver and Jim Palmer and I are doing the game. We're just happy we weren't thrown out of the booth when it stopped shaking. So you had that petrifying few seconds. And then all I thought to myself, you kind of go back almost to the 10th grade when I'm taking a journalism class. And the tenets of journalism are who, what, when, where, and how, and why. And I remember thinking, okay, this is very different. Be calm. Just keep focused, and don't go to a place that you don't belong. Only talk about the things you know for certain. And it was kind of crazy because we're getting information coming from this source and that source, and this is 1989. Pre everything. Today, if there was an earthquake, Twitter would have it within 2 seconds. At that point in San Francisco, one of the ironies of that night is that the earthquake took place at 5:04. At about 5:20, people still don't really know what took place. They know it was an earthquake, but candlesticks and closed, you can't see outside. They don't know what's really going on. And the crowd starts to chant, play ball, play ball. They had no idea what had taken place. So I had an idea, obviously, because we had the blimp and I could see certain things. And all I talked about that night was what I knew for certain, because we're getting all kinds of misinformation that's coming in, and I'm going, no. We have to get all of this corroborated. So it's a case of, and it's another thing that I always thought about in broadcasting, Dan, less is more sometimes, because where you get into trouble is you go into places where you don't belong. So I told you what I knew for certain. I'd lived in that area for a lot of years, so I certainly geographically I knew what was going on. I had a feeling for what was taking place, in the Bay Area at that point, and I only went to places that I belonged, that I knew about.
Were you ever told to evacuate? Because you guys are up high.
We were. So what happened was everybody was kind of milling around, and then they postponed the game at about close to 5:30. So at that point, the stadium emptied out, orderly. I mean, the earthquake, there was no more shaking. And I went down because we did not have communication to the extent that we needed it in the booth. So they brought me down to the truck, and I did most of the analysis that night from the production truck. And they had a microphone in there, which I've looked at the tape a few times, obviously, and it looked like something Sinatra would have used, if he was in a cabaret. It was all sparkly, and it just looked like something a guy would be singing at a nightclub into. So I had that, and I was there for a number of hours. Right, in fact, they kept me there until after 4 a.m. because they wanted me to go on Good Morning America, which started at 7 Eastern time. So it was quite the night. It was a memorable night. It was unbelievable, and I'm just look. People say, was that a great thrill for me? No, it wasn't a great thrill. It's a tragedy. That was a tragedy. Yeah. People are dying, billions of dollars of damage and all of that. I wish it had never happened. But, when something like that happens, you just have to you hope that you're equal to the task. And at least I was able to hold the fort down until they were able to get the news people out there.
Best ballpark, though, you ever played in?
Oh, wow. I think the first time going into Dodger Stadium, I never liked to play there because they always had great pitching, but it was like you couldn't stand at second base and had a fungo out of there. So, and the first time I walked into the Astrodome, and our manager had a meeting before the game, says, all right, get out there now, look at all the stuff in the stadium, get it over with so you can focus on the game. And, they had those Cowboys riding across there and stars shooting and fireworks. And you went by the ballpark where you were most comfortable. Shea Stadium had all the trash and all the airplanes flying over. You got to San Francisco and Stu Miller blew off the mound. And, I wore pantyhose one night just to try to keep warm and the wind's blowing across in the fog. And I would throw towards shortstop. I would throw it towards shortstop so it would blow towards second base.
Go back to the pantyhose here.
Somebody we were trying to look for long johns and they were so thick at the time, and I don't want to blame Namath or anything else for doing that, but somebody said that you could actually wear pantyhose and it would keep you warmer, and it was cold out there, and no, I couldn't buy any that didn't run, and you hate a run in a stocking. That's the worst thing. So I did away with those. They only made San Francisco.
Could now, if that's up for auction, I'll bid on your pantyhose.
Okay, I won't go there, Dan.
Yeah,
but that's
I'm
sure your wife would love you running around the round. Yeah. These are Johnny's pantyhose. Yeah. Look at these, honey.
Yes. Yeah, and I paid good money for them. All right, update us on where things stand. What is fact and what is fiction here with the Rockets and Harden?
Yeah, the overriding fact is he wants to be to a team he can consider a contender, which he considered the Rockets to be in past years, and apparently no longer feels that this team is a championship contender. That part hovers over everything. He showed up on Tuesday, began his COVID protocol testing, should be able to practice when the team gets back from Chicago on Monday, assuming everything goes well with the testing. And the Rockets have to decide what they want to do is slow play this as much as possible. Take their time, determine if they are to deal him, they can get the best deal now, trade deadline, or next summer. Factoring in that if you can determine, I get a better deal later, you also have a chance, however small or to whatever degree the chance is, that he'll decide, hey, this team's good, I want to be here. I don't know how great a chance that is, but if you trade him, there is no chance of that. So there's advantages for them to wait.
What do you make of the report yesterday that you can add the Miami Heat and Milwaukee Bucks to that list with the Nets and the 76ers? Who's adding that? Harden is adding that?
Yes, but he had previously told them contenders. So putting names by the word contenders doesn't really change much. We can all determine who the contenders are. And if we would probably start with the best record in the league last year and the team that went to the finals in the Eastern Conference last year. So that doesn't really move the ball when it comes to the decisions the Rockets have to make. The Rockets, if they are to trade him, they can trade him anywhere they want. And to me, if you're a bad team, if you're a team stuck in that never get in the playoffs or barely fight to be a first-round loser team, hey, load it all up. Go for him. Now, most of those teams don't have anything to load up or not enough, but the Rockets are not in any way compelled to move him to a contender.
It feels like James Harden has been running this organization for a while, or at least deciding who's coming and who's going. If it's a coach who's going to be going and another coach comes in, I think he might have wanted Ty Lue instead of Silas. But James Harden was trying to build himself a championship team. It didn't work, and now he wants out. And I got to blame him for some of the things that have happened here. Like, he doesn't take ownership in this to say, you know what, it didn't work. Let's try another way, a new philosophy.
Yeah, it's good to be the king. Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, the most obvious example is he really wanted to reunite with Russell Westbrook. They remained friends, and they do still, by the way. They are still friends, and they never really had issues, but they weren't a good fit from the idea. And obviously to now, he wanted that, and the Rockets, to use their term, went all in for that. I mean, 2 lightly protected first-round picks, Chris Paul, and 2 potential pick swaps. They traded much of their future. And now they thought it was good too. At the time, Chris Paul had an injury-filled year. They thought there was a chance that would be the future for him. So it's not like he dragged them kicking and screaming and they didn't want it, but they did it to appease him. That's not it at all. But he wanted it badly. And he made that very clear to Daryl Morey, who went all out to go all in. And I mean, that's the most obvious example. But yeah, he's made a lot of decisions or had a lot of influence, and he's been kept in the loop on all kinds of things for years, because they thought, Daryl especially believed, that creates a partnership. Well, the partnership doesn't seem to be going very well right now, because it's sort of like, hey, we had a great year, 8 years of marriage, but, I found somebody better. Well, the one you want to leave isn't too thrilled with that.
It was a couple of weeks ago, I think, when you wrote a column and you said that the Patriots sort of know what they have with Cam Newton. What is it, and what's that mean for the future?
What it is probably, weirdly, Dan, it's the best case scenario for this year, because they are so bereft of offensive weaponry. And you see it during these games. I don't know if anybody would be getting a hell of a lot more out of it, whether it was Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, or Cam Newton. They're so challenged at the wide receiver spot. So what you have in Newton is a guy who can run for 11 touchdowns, who can be a red zone threat, who can pick up 3rd and 2s by bullying forward, but you pay the price otherwise. So they know that you can't have him, at least in my estimation. Bill might think differently, but this is an anachronistic offense. It's a 1950s high school offense where you just have the biggest kid on the block and say he's going to run you over. And then if the other team has a good kid too from the other neighborhood, you're screwed.
Could you see Bill ever coaching a different team?
Wesleyan lacrosse.
That's it. Not in the NFL. No?
No, I don't. I don't see that happening. I don't know if he could kick upstairs and be a consultant and have Steven Belichick perhaps be a head coach, or, Mayo or someone like that. But I really think that, and he is such a detail-oriented guy, Dan, and, you've dealt with him. I just don't think he would want to walk away and give anybody the satisfaction of saying, yeah, well, Bill drove the team into the ground at the end once Brady left. I think he would be stubborn enough to say, no, I'm not going anywhere.
Now, to recap what we did, we were talking about Michael Bublé, and then we all did our Michael Bublé impersonations. So we were.
Cool cat. Hey, so winging that.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Now, I don't know if this is it Tony Bennett? Is it Ella Fitzgerald? Whose voice? How did you find your voice?
That's a great question. It's funny. I was thinking about this morning. I think, like all of us, we all have people that we idolize. We all have people that mean a lot to us. And so we borrow from them. We steal from them. And so I stole from everyone I could steal with little things. I took the way that, say, Dean Martin would drop his epiglottis. It's the way he would kind of have that thing, or Elvis Presley's vibrato, or the way Sinatra would sing on his vowels, A-E-I-O-U, or whatever. There's all of these things. Ella Fitzgerald, she had sort of the way that she would bounce between notes. I would steal it all. And at first I was nothing but a thief. I truly was. I don't think I could tell you what I sounded like. And it took me years. I mean, even after I got signed, I think I was into my third record, before I really started to find my own distinct style. Up till then, I think I was really no more than a kid just trying to impersonate the people that I loved, you know. But I think that's the same for everybody. If you're in broadcasting, it's like, I have many friends that are broadcasters. It's the same thing. They look at guys and girls that came before them and they just tried to steal. And then they finally did become themselves.
I want you to be the judge here. Todd, you want to start first with your Michael Bublé impersonation? All right. And just tell us what you think.
I'm so excited to hear this.
Okay. I'm sure you are. Okay, Todd, are you ready?
Fire is so delightful, and since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
All righty.
That's not bad at all. That's got a little Bill Murray in there.
Star
Wars.
One of the great singers of all time, Bill Murray.
I don't mind that. I thought that was pretty good.
All right. McLovin, you don't sing, do you?
Can I give my turn to Todd for a second
No,
song?
no. I can't have Todd. Todd doesn't get. No.
One more verse.
All right.
Man, it doesn't show signs of stopping. And I brought me some corn for popping. The lights are turned way down low. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
All righty. Seton O'Connor.
Oh, you guys are killing me.
Well, you know, Michael, I was thinking, since you sort of brought back that style of like that crooner style, I think what we're missing right now is more of the Bing Crosbys of the world, the sort of come late, hold me, pum. I think that there's a market for that right now, more of a modern
I think so
Bing.
too.
I was just listening to Bing Crosby, David Bowie last night at the dinner table. And, that my wife goes, that's David Bowie's #1 single. I go, it's not Bing Crosby's #1 single, but I know it's David Bowie's #1 single. All right, Paulie.
Can you do that? Can you do that one piece again? Because I feel like it may not work for Christmas, but it could work for a porno.
Okay. Seton?
Because I keep it down here, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, come, they told me. Pum.
Yeah. Okay, Paul.
All right, Michael, you're never going to feel better about your singing skills in about 3 seconds. Here it is from Sinatra, my favorite line. A lady doesn't wander all over the room and blow on some other guy's dice. I just like the line.
It.
I can't sing.
I love Luck Be a Lady. That's a great tune.
Luck Be a Lady Tonight. Yeah. We have something called Stat of the Day. And I have Will Ferrell's done it. Darius Rucker's done it. And all it is just, can we play Will Ferrell or Darius Rucker just to give Michael an idea of what it sounds like?
Stat of the day, stat of the day, stat of the day, stat of the day. Here comes that what? Stat of the day.
Okay, so that's Will Ferrell as Ron Burgundy. Here's Melissa Etheridge.
Woo! Ow! Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Stat of the day! This is the stat of the day!
And then here's Darius Rucker.
Stat of the day, stat of the day. Here comes the stat of the day, yeah, stat of the day, stat of the day. Here comes the stat of the day.
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot. You could either do it here, or if you wanted to go to your recording studio and dress it up, and you could do it that way. So,
you mean I could do like a serious production of it?
Yeah, like I'll let you have that option because.
Can I would do both. I would do one live here, and I would give you.
Right.
I would give you a massive 75-piece orchestra.
Okay. All right. So it's you a cappella. So.
Boom, boom, boom. Stat of the day. Stat of the day. Oh, baby, it's the stat of the day. Stat of the day. Stat of the day. It's the stat of the day. Wow. Grammys.
Grammys.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.